horse drifted alarmingly in the betting was, fancied in the morning, continued to drift. It was late on the exchanges to lose. It was something you'd see in a Dick Francis novel, Charles Buttons.
The ground is soft. It's not.
It's heavy.
It's soft on times.
It's heavy.
Okay.
And a very warm welcome to the Boss Joe's Inquiry Sunday Sermon Special. We've got another special guest. Well, she's back again. It's Gay Kelleway. Welcome, Gay.
Hi, boys. How are you?
Yep, very well. And obviously with myself and Gay tonight is John Leng, my partner in crime from John Joe's Blogspot. Hello, John. Good evening to you, sir.
Evening, Al.
Yes. And we've got an action-packed show for you today because obviously there's a lot of hot topics in the sport at the moment, and namely a lot of litigation and cases flying around, and Gay's wanting to get her teeth into these. So without further ado, let's start chatting away. Now, obviously, Gay, from your last appearance on the show, which we very much enjoyed, and there's some good feedback on it, the Bryony Frost and Robert Dunne affair. Obviously, it's left a sour taste in your mind because I can remember you saying about your times in the weighing room, etc., etc. On the case so far, have you heard anything to alter your view on this?
No, I still stand as what I see. I mean, I know Bryony, and she's not as, I say, I'd be a lot more outspoken than Bryony would ever be. But what he did to her and said to her is the God's honest truth. And because I know Bryony, and she wouldn't just make, why would you want to, tell me this, logically, why would you want to come out publicly when you're a very successful jockey like Bryony is and make a scene? You wouldn't want to make a scene, would you? Unless it was bad. And I too would have done the same if I could in my time. Sadly, I couldn't because the stewards wanted me wiped out anyway. I remember a steward saying to a jockey, isn't it about time you wiped out that Kelleway? Had a senior steward say that to him at Leicester. Yeah. So I had no legs to stand on. But now, in this day and age, decades and decades later, this shouldn't be happening. And they speak out. And this, what goes on in the weighing room stays in the weighing room, is the biggest load of bollocks I've ever heard. It should be transparent. And I think young jockeys and female jockeys, any jockey should be able to approach a steward and say, hey, I'm not going to be spoken to like that. I'm not going to, and it's bullying. It is actual bullying. And this shouldn't happen. And I know, would I want to go and make a scene if I didn't think it was bad? I sure hell would have done if I could. And she can be heard. But what I feel strongly about is that I don't think it was dealt very well from the beginning, from the stewards at that racecourse. That should have been picked up. Why on earth does a guy that's looking after a fence can overhear this conversation when there was half a dozen jockeys in that race that heard the conversation as well, how badly he spoke to her? Why didn't someone speak up to the poor girl? And I know for a fact some jockeys go into the way, because lady jockeys can go in the weighing room. In my day, I wasn't allowed to put even my toe in the weighing room. Oh no, ladies don't go in. Well, fair enough. Ladies don't go in the men's changing room, fine. But now in this day and age, they walk in and out like unisex, blah, blah, blah. So, and I know for a fact that some jockeys take the towel and say, have a bit of this. And I know that's happened before with flat jockeys, because I've had recently a retired flat jockey, lady flat jockey, told me it does go on and there is bullying going on. So why on earth this is allowed to go on? And they turn a blind eye, these stewards at the race courses. It's a disgrace. They shouldn't turn a blind eye. And these people that are subject to doing this should be warned, cautioned, told to go away or fined heavily, and this shouldn't go on. And I do believe what you're reading in the paper is the truth, what Bryony said. But why would Bryony want to make it up? She's a very successful jockey, more so than this Dunne guy. And why would she want to make a scene unless it was true? So, but it was handled badly from the beginning. It should have been nipped in the bud that week. What do you make of certain jockeys in the weighing room that aren't really very supportive of Bryony? Why do you think that is? Gutless. Yeah. Is there a man amongst them? I ask myself. There's a lot of jockeys that this should stay in the weighing room and this should be as private, sort of, like a bit like the same football changing rooms where it also happens in the changing room. A lot of sports, it's changed a lot. Look at cricket. Hello, let's have a look at the Yorkshire cricket team. I mean, that's in turmoil. We've got to be transparent, because what will happen in years to come, there'll be lawsuits, because certain lady jockeys will go along the line and think about it, and a lawyer will come up to them and say, hey, were you bullied? Were you incriminated? Were you sexually harassed? And if they say, yeah, I've got a great lawsuit here, and then it'll all be dragged up again. So I think we've got to have some transparency here.
Is it a case of also like racing in general just not moving forward in
We're in the
changing
archives,
times?
aren't we? Really?
Yeah.
We are in the archives. I mean, Jesus, when I was riding, I mean, the old boys and the old girls. I mean, it was Lord this, Sir that, Lady so and so was the only woman in there, and she was I mean, they were older than God, and they referred to this ancient history book, and the rules, but they did not agree of a woman being there.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I've actually got the letter, a card I was sent by a woman rider that worked in racing. She wasn't a jockey. She wrote to the PJA and said, you know, I'm looking for a job in racing. Can you help me? And the letter came back. I've actually still got it. And the letter came back and said, it's not really a route, my dear. You want to go find something else to work, to do a job with. It's not really for women racing. Wow. That was in my time, just before my time. That was in the mid-70s.
In your time, Gay, when you were riding, would you have given Robbie Dunne a smack in the chops?
Yeah.
Straightforward.
I would have beat the shit out of him. No, I would. No, I always stood my ground. I mean, it did actually smack a jockey in the face once, and I was a bit quite feisty, but I had a hard time. And a lot of people come back at me and says, oh, that Gay Kelleway's this and Gay Kelleway's that. She's hard, da-da-da. I had a hard time when I started riding. I was so alone.
Did.
You know, mental health problems, they were out the window. There was times when I wanted to just, literally, when I was in a car one day, I just wanted to, I really did think about it, just opening joy and just killing myself, because that's how bad I got it. But, you know, thank God I had a bit of a brain, and I thought, no, don't let them beat you. Don't let them beat you down. I had a very hard trainer. My father was a hard man. He gave me a hard time. I was getting a hard time in the weighing room. I even got a lift to the races, and the trainers that are training now gave me a hard time. Harassment was beyond belief. But that's times have changed now, and this should not be happening. And we should not be reading about this in our national newspapers. And I've got friends that are totally nothing to do with racing. And when they read this, how can I portray racing being a good sport and getting people to go racing when things like this are in the papers? It's a disgrace. And I'm embarrassed to speak to my friends over lunch about this. This shouldn't be happening in this day and age. It's disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, let's say that the BHA rule in favour of Bryony. What do you think will happen to Robbie Dunne? What do you think they'll do to him?
I really don't care. I really don't care. I don't care what they do to him. I just think he'd be told on uncertain terms, and let it be a warning for other men that turn around and speak to someone and threatening their life. Because hell, it's hard enough riding in races without being threatened. Put you through the ring, I'm going to kill you. Why would she make it up? Come on. Why would she make it up? A success, and she is very successful. She's got nothing to gain. She's only got hardship from her fellow jockeys and people giving her bullshit. The only thing she's going to get out of this. She's going to get no satisfaction. You think she goes to bed at night and not worry about this? Of course she goes about it. It's not very nice. I know what she's going through. It's not nice at all. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But it's something I'm glad she brought up. Why should she be bullied like that? And why she should be spoken to like nobody should be spoken to like that. No one.
Yeah. I mean, it's a real sorry affair. And as the bar steward stance, we fully support Bryony in this because there's nothing really else to support. The evidence is clear. I think, like you said, Gay, Bryony has made these allegations, which, like you said, why would she even make this up? It's not possible. Other jockeys are trying to dismiss it as banter, as if they just want it all to go away under the carpet. But like you say, it shouldn't go
let me interrupt you here, right? Talk about banter, right? And I'll hold my hand up. I had a kid ride for me last winter, and I got fined £250 for, and it was during lockdown. There was no public there or anything at Southwell Racecourse. And I give him a serious bollocking because he gave the horse a bad ride. He was on a favourite. It was Saturday night. It was cold. I was on my own. I led the horse up. I didn't really want to do that on a Saturday night. I got earache off the owner, and he gave it a £7 claimer. And everybody's telling me how good this kid is, and he rides brilliant. And he rode it shocking. He was actually bullied by two jockeys in the race who were on the second. He was on the favourite, my horse, and he was bullied by these two jockeys who, one of them he got a lift in the car with, so clearly was telling him how to ride this race. So he was a bit weak, the kid, mentally to let them allow him. Anyway, unknown to me, apparently he was in the steward's room because the two jockeys in question carved him up. Well, these two lovely jockeys put my name forward and went to the steward and said that Gay Kelleway's just given that poor kid a right bollocking, should have her in, blah, blah, blah. She spoke to him badly. So the steward had me in, and I'm an honest person, and I'm not going to deny. I said, yes. I gave him a bollocking that no other trainer out of the ordinary wouldn't have done what I did. Okay? I did. I hold my hand up, and it was the same week as the business of Bryony Frost, and the same week when Paige Fuller, and also, no, not Bryony Frost, it was Paige Fuller and the other lad had a go at each other, and they got fined, and it was the same week Gordon Elliott sat on that dead horse. Well, anyway, so of course, I was dragged in with that. I mean, how they can put in a comparison with Gordon Elliott sitting on a dead horse and me giving a kid a bollocking. What I honestly said to him, I said, you give that a dot of a ride and go in and watch the replay because you should have won on this horse. And the winning jockey evidently said to the stewards that give him a ride. I was nowhere near the winning jockey. I didn't know this jockey had said something to the stewards. Well, he wouldn't have heard it. And the other jockey who's got beef with me, who was actually harassing me, because I wasn't giving him rides, and he's, he can't buy a ride now, was giving me jib, and he had obviously a beef with me. So these two jockeys reported me to the stewards. Now, I went to the stewards, said, yeah, I'll hold my hand up. I gave the lad a bollocking. And the stewards were a bit embarrassed because it was really a silly thing, two jockeys dragging a trainer in about a kid, and the kid refused to come in and give evidence because he didn't want to get involved. Now, really, what I should have turned around and said, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm an honest person. I was honest. And I held my hand up. But I said it. I held my hand up and I said the truth. And what I'm trying to come across here is that why doesn't he just admit that he was in the wrong, apologise, forward? But we're not. He's denying everything, isn't it, more or less?
Yeah. No. I mean, this is the BHA, though. The BHA will always go after the smaller trainer, operator, jockey, whatever. It just seems the way of the world now.
They do. I feel that we're picked on in every angle. I'm picked on by the handicappers, those in authority. I just think the small trainer gets a kick in everywhere.
Well, that's again. I mean, imagine you imprisoned your daughter. What do you think the BHA would say to you? Sheikh Mohammed affair. It's horrendous. There's always double standards because obviously
and that's trouble with racing.
Yeah.
My father used to say, God rest his soul, always said there was double standards when it comes to horse racing. Knowledge would never get you. And knowledge would get you nowhere. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Unfortunately.
Okay, we'll move on to our second litigation affair, where it's a rather more serious one in terms of penalties for Graham Gibbons. He's found guilty here of dangerous riding, which caused the unfortunate injury of Freddie Tylicki. Now, there's a lot of goings and forwards in the court this week, and I've read some of the transcript. Where do you stand at the moment on this?
It was common knowledge that Gibbons had a drinking problem, and it was common knowledge by the PJA. And they all knew about it, and it was all brushed under.
I heard that he'd been banned for drunk driving and jailed for drunk driving prior to this. That's what I heard. I mean, I don't know.
4 times, I believe, and it was common knowledge. So why on earth was he allowed to ride racehorses? He was a danger to everyone. And even fellow jockeys knew that he'd been drinking that day. And he, on a regular basis, I remember embarrassed with an owner one day. We stayed overnight up at Musselburgh after a horse run, and this particular Gibbons was with trainer and a couple other jockeys, and he was the loudest, he was the drunkest, and he was riding the next day. Why did they allow this? I thought they had drink testings. They should have a more regular basis of testing in these jockeys. You talk to other sportsmen, no other sportsman drinks and kicks a football or drives a Formula One car. It only seems to be in racing. We're so cavalierish about this, and it's really dangerous. You're riding racehorses. You wouldn't you're not meant to get in a car and drive, are you, drunk?
Didn't somebody get done for taking a piss test on behalf of?
Yeah, it's all the.
Was it Callum Shepherd?
It's all the camaraderie in the weighing room. I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. Well, it's all fallen back and then punch them in the face. Because if someone had stood up and said something, poor Freddie wouldn't be in a wheelchair now, would he? Come on, let's be honest. Huh?
Jim actually said in court this week that he could smell alcohol on Gibbons' breath that night.
Jim should have opened his trap on the night.
Why wasn't he dragged in front of those stewards that night and banned from riding?
What leaves a fairly toxic sort of taste to me, really, is the way these are all queuing up now to stick the shiv in Gibbons when they've had years to highlight this, and yet it's only now when the whole house of cards is coming to see fit to speak up.
But why didn't they speak up that night in question?
That's exactly what I'm saying. They could have
all this, what they said in the rain room stays in the rain, which is bollocks.
It's absolutely toxic.
These jockeys want to grow a pair of bollocks. and stand up and be heard. They really do. And they're riding. I don't want someone who's been drinking riding my horse. How embarrassing in front of the owner. And they've got to start doing more tests. And it still goes on. You know, these jockeys get tests and they're found to be doing. How many episodes have we had in the Racing Post this year from jockeys drinking or drug testing? Come on. It doesn't stop, does it? There should be tougher fines. If I was running the BHA, I tell you, those jockeys, I'd go to that PJA and I said, listen, if any jockey is found with drugs in their system or drinking any kind of form of, what level, they're banned for 5 years. They won't be able to ride for 5 years, and make it tougher on them. Tough. And go back to the real world and be a stable lad and realise, how lucky they've got it when the lads are working so hard in this bloody awful weather this time of year and getting horses ready for those lot to get on our horses and ride them in races. It's not fair. It's not unfair of the people that are working, the trainers, the stable staff, the owners. They should be so much more professional. I'm not counting for all of them because there's jockeys out there that are really professional, and they do the job right and they train hard. I mean, you only have to look at Holly Doyle and Tom Marquand. They're an asset to our industry. So, there are good jockeys out there, but there's still a minority that playing the game and not doing the job properly. And they should be wiped out.
What I thought was interesting, actually, was something that the QC representing Tylicki said. He said there'd been a breach in the standard of care required on Gibbons' part. Well, I was very surprised he didn't say there'd been a breach in the standard of care required on the BHA's part.
Well, Here's the thing. In a court of law, anybody with half a brain, you get a solicitor involved, a lawyer, I wouldn't be chasing Gibbons. I'd be chasing the people that are running the show.
Exactly.
Really, wouldn't you? Because at the end of the day, it's their responsibility, those stewards at that racecourse, to ensure the safety of those jockeys and everybody's behaving. Instead of running after me that hasn't got the right logo on its front of its shirt for sponsorship, they should be looking at these jockeys and making sure they're going out there with proper conduct and playing a part of a proper sportsman. So the only people that will be paying out here is the insurance company. So therefore, that's a real white elephant, because what's going to happen here, if Tylicki wins the case and the insurance company has to pay out this huge amount of money, insurance companies won't touch jockeys.
No.
And then it will lead on so forth to what was going to happen in Formula One when Lewis Hamilton slightly goes across another driver. Are they going to sue him? I don't know how, personally. How can you separate this? Can you say when a jockey at the racecourse goes across another jockey, that jockey behind just has to snatch up or his horse falls? I've seen some terrible falls over the years. And you can see plainly it was the other jockey's fault. He shouldn't have gone across the rail. So are you going to sue every jockey that carves you up? But my point here is this. That jockey wasn't fit to ride, bottom line. He was not fit to ride. And therefore, who are the people to blame? Of course, the jockey, but he was in no fit state to know what he's doing, for God's sake. He was drunk. So someone should have pulled him up. They must have known. The valets must have known. And people know. It always tries to be, don't get me on it, because I just feel the people in charge at the races weren't doing their jobs. And I can't blame the BHA, because there's governing bodies. The chap's not in charge at Russ anymore. And there's different people in London. But they ensure the people at the racecourses, the stewards at the racecourses, to do a job. And clearly they didn't do their job. End of.
Yeah, I mean, to bring jockeys in line with sort of other professional sports, what measures would you recommend be brought in? Exactly. I mean, to ensure that the clean of drugs and alcohol surely is a gimme before they sit on a horse to ride. But as we know, that's probably not going to be the case even now. I mean, I haven't got evidence of this, but in terms of widespread use of obviously cocaine and in the world at the moment, are you in favour, Gay, of a lot stricter testing?
I am 100%. I don't want some jockey get mind you. The jockeys I use wouldn't do that anyway. We have a massive problem in racing, massive problem in the stable staff. We have a massive shortage of staff in racing. Trainers are employing staff that do take drugs or have alcohol problems, and therefore young people get involved. Get the young. I've got a young lad just joined me, a lovely lad. He's on my property in one of my flats. He's an apprentice. And the previous trainer said to his father, throw him to the lions going to Newmarket. What does he mean by that? He means that there's a massive drug problem in Newmarket, which we do have with the younger generation in racing. And this is what we have to iron out. And this is what the BHA have got to look at. It starts in the stables. because these young lads get involved in that. And I know it's everywhere, and everybody says it's everywhere, it's the younger generation, etc. But you cannot have this in sport. You know how strict they are in the Olympics, the tough tests they have to take. You're actually getting on horses. They're not running along in a straight line, in tram lines. They're running in a field amongst other people and putting other people's lives in danger. It's a dangerous sport, horse racing. It truly is. And I think you've got to have stricter measures when it comes to jockeys. They've got to be more professional. And you need to sit the damn guys down and say, listen, PJA meetings, bring all the jockeys, a whole lot of them in the UK, don't have any racing one day, and put them in a room, say, like, listen, you guys and ladies, this is what's going to happen. If any of you are found guilty of alcohol or substance, you're out. No second chance. You're out. Yeah. You're out.
Surely it's a case of installing machines at each race course that obviously measure breath and test for drugs like the police have. And
sadly, it was going to come to this, isn't it? What else?
It's got to do. It's got to do. It has to do, because if you get another repeat scenario, again, we've learned nothing. We've just simply, like you said, want guys in a wheelchair. And if it happens again, I mean, happening once is terrible, but happening twice would be just unforgivable if it was to happen again for someone that was under the influence. That obviously obviously I'm assuming that there's no evidence that Graham Gibbons was under the influence, because that's just me surmising, but being highlighted elsewhere. Graham had a lot of problems with substances and alcohol, and Jim Crowley testified in court saying he smelt breath on Graham's breath. The thing for me is, why didn't Jim Crowley just say something to a senior steward straight away? Like I say,
and that's how you read it in the papers, isn't it? And that's how you read it in the paper.
Yeah, there's no dobbing in, though, is there? I mean, Gay mentioned, why didn't a valet pick up on it? Well, if you go back to the Bryony Frost business, you had the uncle and nephew team of valets that were working at Southall. Now, they described Dunne and Frost as a bit of banter.
Banter.
Yeah.
So if it was banter, why did Bryony want to put herself through all this?
Exactly. And Graham Piper...
She wouldn't put herself. She's a successful jockey. She's loved by the public. It's like Holly Doyle putting herself through something like this. They wouldn't want to do it unless it was bad. Of
course not. And this Graham Piper, this is how indoctrinated they are in this weighing room code. He calls it a family environment. So I suppose Stopper Dunne...
Oh, it's a family environment when Alan Monroe smacked Jim Crowley across the face, or one of those jockeys. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. Was it Jim Crowley? Oh, it was one of those jockeys when they had a big fight in there and they tried to keep that under wraps. You know what I mean? Or Stuart Webster and Kieran Fallon up at, where was it? It was Beverly. And they stepped in there with Kieran and they reprimanded. But Kieran did it with no doubtedly. He'd been carved up, and quite rightly so. He's nearly got killed, and he sorted it out. He smacked him one, didn't he? But he did it in front of everyone. So he did it in front of everyone, and he got done for it, didn't he? So, but he did it. Fair due to Kieran. He let out steam and let everybody see. You didn't sneakily do it behind scenes, did you?
You've got the rallies in the weighing rooms, a family environment. So, I mean, I suppose Robbie Dunne waving his schlong at Bryony Frost, that's akin to an abusive uncle going at it or something, isn't it? You know, I mean, what the hell's that all about?
Yeah, he wouldn't be that. Can I just say something? He wouldn't be the first jockey to do that to some of the girls. Hayley Turner's she's a good jockey. She rides for me. She's a good friend, and she just wants everybody to get on. And fair enough. There's a certain lady jockey I spoke to recently, who's recently retired, said, you don't know half of Gay what goes on. She'd be too frightened to speak up because she's a nice person and she doesn't want to rattle anybody's cages. She just goes along with her life. But at the end of the day, she told me some things that it's just not true. It's not a family environment. She said you get bullied there, they give you a stick. And I think this has got to be seriously looked at by the BHA. And I think the BHA must be looking at this, because for allowing this to slip through the net for them, it's something seriously they have to look at.
Well, on that bombshell, I mean, there's a case I can tell you about. Well, I shouldn't be telling anyone about it, but really, and I can't name names because that would be unfair. But there's a similar case that the BHA haven't let on yet that's going on behind the scenes, and it's involving a jump jockeys where a male jump jockey whipped the towel off of a female jockey and went, "Way!" So that's basically behind the scenes at the moment.
What I find completely ironic is that I was not allowed to even breathe at the door in the men's changing room. And they said, women are not allowed in here. Fair enough. We have the ladies' loos. I know there's unisex loos nowadays, but then we had ladies' loos and we have men's loos. And you don't see Serena Williams going into Andy Murray's changing room or Andy Murray going into her changing room, do you?
No.
Don't think that's going to happen, do you?
I mean, John,
if this is a family environment, it's the Adams family, isn't it?
The thing is, I mean, it's like all these jockeys that are sort of defending this as banter and aren't coming out in support of Bryony. How would they feel if it was their daughter?
That's a very valid point. How would they feel it was their daughter, their sister, their brother even? You know, who's to say that lads aren't getting bullied, you know?
Yeah.
Young lads.
There's a lot for them to clear up, and I don't think the current crop of jockeys are helping the situation at all. I think it should be called out, and they shouldn't be defending the mates or trying to just brush this under the carpet as something else. So
it's completely unprofessional. You go there. I used to turn up at the races. I didn't have a jockey as a friend. I didn't want them as my friends. As far as I'm concerned, they're work colleagues, and I ride against them. I don't want to form a friendship. I'll go out there to ride and win. It's all about winning in this game.
Yeah,
it's all about winning. And when you're a true sportsman, you think Lewis Hamilton goes out for a drink with the guy he's got to beat the next day? I don't think so, do you?
No.
I think Andy Murray they all get on well enough, but they're not bosom pals, are they?
No, there's few sort of, you know, it's all professional, which is what it's supposed to be.
You've got to be professional, otherwise you haven't got that I hate to say the word killer instinct, but winning instinct. You've got to have that will to win. You can't be bosom pals with the opposition. You just go into it. You're there to do a job. These jockeys don't realise how much it costs us. The owner, I'm an owner, okay, I'm speaking as an owner's point of view here, because I see my BHA account and my Weatherby's account. I speak as an owner. It costs a lot of money to get my racehorse to the racecourse, okay? I'm paying trainers' fees, which can amount to nearly £2,000 a month, and some of them more, if you're trained by some bigger trainers. It's meant to be our enjoyment. And you're paying a guy over 130 quid to get on your horse for about 10 minutes, if that. And there's no other job in the world that you work as a trainer, you work your backside off, and you put this other person to finish the job off that you don't work every day with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You put another human being to finish the job off for you, okay? And basically it's finishing the job off. And you no matter all the will in the world, you've done your best as a trainer to get that horse fit, get that horse to the races. And you know what a lot of work goes to. Keep the owners happy. The owner wants this job. And you entrust that person, the jockey, whether it be female or male. I don't like saying male jockeys or female. I say jockey, I mean both genders. And you entrust that person to get on your horse and finish the job. And you're paying that person. Sometimes I think these jockeys think they don't get paid. They are getting paid very well to ride these horses. And they've got to start acting and growing up and being professional. I'm not talking for all of them. I'm talking about a minority. I'm still talking about them. But they should all be professional. And there's even top ones there that were being very unprofessional this year, as we all know. There's a top jockey, a flat jockey there. They've got to step up their game. And we've got to be proud of our horse racing industry. And they're meant to be our leaders on this. And that's all I can say, that, you know, they've got to step up their game, these jockeys.
I mean, the thing for me, the BHA can do so much, but like you said, it comes down to responsibility of the fellow professionals as well. I mean, we all know the BHA are incompetent at the best of times. And speaking of which, a mutual friend of mine says you wrote a letter to the BHA recently, Mrs. Julie Harrington, the new head of the BHA, regarding the environment. Okay, is this true?
Well, I'm on the board for the ROA, and did make a point of like, what are we in racing doing for our environment? And I'm a great believer. I recycle, and I don't do my bit. I'm a great believer. I eat organic foods. I'm basically a plantarian. You know, I like the planet. I love my planet, and I look to the future generation and years to come. 5 to our great grandkids. Is there going to be a planet here? Is there going to be any horse racing here? There's going to be nothing. Yeah. We'll be wiped out because we're killing the planet, as we all know, around the globe. And a lot of people don't care because they won't be here. But I actually care about our planet. And I think we should be actually doing something for it. Now, in France, I hate to bang on about France because I keep doing that to you, don't I? they have I've seen with my own eyes. I went to Newcastle one day and I was racing up there. And a lot of horse boxes turn up. And a lot of horse boxes from the same areas turn up. Yeah. And they're all taking one horse here and one horse there. And there'd be about 30 boxes from with one horse in it from the same area, which I can't comprehend in my head. Whereas in France, what they do is they give each owner €3,000 towards their expenses of travelling expenses. So therefore encourage them. They have a system where they use STH, which is a French company, horsebox company, or the other company, where they go around picking up half a dozen horses. So you've got 6 horses on one lorry. Not like when I was up at Newcastle, when they had one horse on a 7-horse box, Godolphin. Then they brought a minibus with their lads on, and then the assistant trainer come in the other car. Is that environment friendly? No. So why can't we put a system in place? And this is the letter I wrote. I said, what is similar to what I'm saying to you? Why can't we put in place a system where we have the option, some sort of system where we offer it to our owners, and it's our owners don't get a lot out of this race, so the prize money is shocking. But can't we put some sort of funds towards this system? And if you join that as an owner, therefore you're cutting your costs, and therefore your horses, be it there'd be 6. Back in the day, years ago, when I worked for my dad as an apprentice, we used to go around the town picking up one of my Bestouts, one of Ben Hanbury, going up to Musselburgh or somewhere. There'd be 6 different stables on one lorry. To me, that is environment friendly, and they did it to keep the costs down. But nobody seems to care anymore. There'd be a lorry. You go to Wolverhampton, you can't even get the horse box park. And there'd be like 30, 40 horse boxes from Newmarket and a load from Lambourne, from Midland. Why can't we share? And don't go on about viruses, because they're quite happy to share when they go abroad.
I was just about to bring...
Don't go on about viruses, because they're quite happy to share when horses go abroad to Baden and France and places. Oh, yeah, they're quite happy to share because that keeps the cost down. But why can't we have the... And as for viruses, you shouldn't be running a horse if you think the horse is sick, should you? Let's face it. And they do, again, stand up, sell to each other in the stores, and they're at the risk. I can go bang on about this all night, when the horses... I would be quite happy if it saves my owners money, saves me money to share, and it'd be do it through companies, transport companies. Therefore, you benefit transport companies who are probably struggling at this time of COVID, and also benefit the owners. And also, most of all, primarily, it will benefit the planet, would it not? And we're doing our bit to help the environment. That's all my suggestion. That's all I put to it.
It's really good. Indeed.
I haven't had a reply yet.
No reply from the BHA. Now, there's a surprise. Yeah, the good old BHA. Julie Harrington, if you're listening to the bar stewards, make sure you reply to me.
I did write a nice letter. But I think the only thing I can think of, they've got enough on their plate at the moment about listening to someone like me banging on. It was just a suggestion. I just thought it was a good idea, that's all. It works in France, doesn't it?
Speaking as I'm a current owner, I suppose, because mine are both injured. But, the transport costs, are horrendous for an owner. I can remember a story of an old owner moaning at Luca Kamani because Luca Kamani charged him £80 from Bedford Lodge to Newmarket.
But that was impressive. Yeah, but if I say to you, listen, right, John, I say, listen, we've got a good scheme here. You can join the scheme. As an owner, you don't have to join the scheme, okay? But this is the scheme that will keep your costs down. Transport, you're going to get, say, £2,500 for the year to cover your costs. You might spend more than that, but you'll be on, then you have to pay the extra on top. But if every owner owns a full horse, whatever, or a horse in training, gets that expenditure, and then they turn around and say, where do we get the money? There's money. There's got to be money out there, and it will help the environment. And we'll show the government. We'll be going to the government and say, look, this is what we're trying to do for our environment, our carbon footprint. So there you go. Anyway, it's just a suggestion. It's just I thought it works in France. Why can't it work here?
Fantastic one. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that implemented. And I think a lot of owners would. I think a lot of owners would enjoy the cutting transport costs, which is obviously a big part of the game in a game where it's
in France they provide a minibus at the major training centres for jockeys. So all jockeys have to go in different cars, and now they're not dashing across from one meeting to another. They sorted out a minibus. They could all go together.
Or getting done for drunk driving, on the way there.
We have to go down that road. But no, it's just an idea of trying to help our planet and doing our bit, but,
Yeah, no, perfect point. Gay, the last time you came on this show, you said to me, there's 2 things, well, you said it off air, you said there's 2 things I forgot to mention, because you said you were waffling on. But
I was waffling, I didn't give you, you got a bit of words and edgeways today.
Yeah, you said Pat Eddery and Victor Chandler, and you said it's the cracking stories. Can you finish our show off with Tales with Pat Eddery and Victor Chandler.
Oh, the Victor Chandler thing amuses me every time. And, you know, I get a lot of grief on social media reminding me, what about your days of Victor? What days did I have with Victor Chandler? And this is the God's honest truth, right? Years ago, I've been in 32 years this game, I had a row with a fellow called Ron Dawson, and I left Newmarket. We'd backed a horse with my owners. I didn't tell Ron Dawson. I rented the yard of Ron Dawson. He thought he was in the right to know. He was quite an arrogant man, not a nice man, not the best landlords I've ever had. But he wasn't a particularly nice guy. I left on no certain terms and went down to Whitcomb, and I was very successful down at Whitcomb. Very, very, my best years ever training in 96, 97, 98. I had some very, very good horses. And I was hugely successful, and I was having winners left, right and centre. I was there for 4 years. And during that time, my assistant trainer, Joe Crowley, and I were in the office together, and we received a letter from Victor Chandler saying, Gay, I'm offering you free bets if you let me know when your horses are going to win. And we were doing so well. We're like winners every week. We were backing. Why on earth would I want to tell him? And I never had a betting account, right? Yeah. And I said, and we laughed. Joe and I made a joke about it. And Joe said, what do you want me to do with it? I said, just tear it and put it in the bin. We should have kept it, actually. So we thought nothing of it, right? But unfortunately, prior to that letter being sent down to me in Whitcomb, he had obviously given it to his secretary. And it was a year after me just moving to Whitcomb, where I just started being really successful. Ron Dawson was still trading in Newmarket. So clearly the letter originally was sent to my Newmarket address. So what do you think happened? Ron Dawson opened it. Okay. And Victor Chandler had offered this wonderful deal that I'd get free bets, blah, blah, blah. It was an offer. Okay. And this letter got into that awful guy. What was he? Another dog that worked for the VHA. Roger someone or other.
Oh, Buffum. Roger Buffum.
You remember him?
Yeah.
Got the sack from the BHA, didn't he?
Yeah, he was useless.
He was doing the cases, chasing. Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah. Hopeless man. He
was investigating us, right? He was investigating different, Jimmy Fitzgerald, blah, 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 having this what do they call it? A non-losing account, right? So the letter had obviously gone to Ron Dawson, had gripes with me. Ron Dawson had clearly sent the letter to this Roger fella that worked for the BHA. So it was in his hands, right? So unknown to me, Victor Chandler must have sent another letter, or his secretary realised he ballsed up or whatever, and sent the letter again to me at Whitcomb, in which I tore it up and laughed about it. So a couple of years later, this went on. This Roger, horrible, nasty little man, like Mr. Magoo, interviewed me in London Hotel and said, look at this letter. And I thought, flipping out. I rang Joe. I said, Joe, this letter, didn't we tear it up? What's it doing in the hands of the Jockey Club? It was the Jockey Club at the time, not the BHA. Well, it figures, doesn't it? It must have gone to Ron Dawson first, and he sent it to us. I said, yeah, of course, and I laughed it off. Anyway, thought nothing of it. Then I moved from Whitcomb down to Newmarket. 5 years later, I think this was, they did a panorama thing on Jimmy Fitzgerald, a couple of other trainers, a jockey, blah, blah, blah. I think Kieran Fallon was one. And they turned up on Sunday afternoon. I thank God I looked all right. I was quite smartly dressed. And they came out, screeched into the yard, jumped out with their cameras with the interview. He says, Gay, can you tell us about your non-losing account with Victor Chandler? And I just laughed. It was a joke. So therefore, that's the God's honest truth what happened. I never had a non-losing account with Victor Chandler. I bet on course. Anybody knows me, I bet on course. I don't have accounts. I have an account which has got about 75p in it so I can watch my races when I'm abroad sometimes. But I don't have betting accounts. So I've never had a betting account with, I don't recall having a betting account with Victor Chandler at all. So I think the only time I was ever asked by Victor Chandler for my horse when I said no, and it went and won at 25-1. So I don't think he was ever going to speak to me again. So there you go. So that's the Victor Chandler story. And whoever's listening from social media, that's the God's honest truth. There was not a non-betting account. So there you go. What I've earned, I've got my arse off for. It wasn't from betting. Unfortunately, I'm not that clever when it comes to gambling.
This is a brilliant story. And there you have it. Social media fiends out there slagging Gay off years ago. There you go. That's
and he's still slagging me off because they still remind me when I do well and everybody says, well done, Gay. This little person that was still my age or still alive can remember the story and remember and you go online, you see Panorama, Gay Kelleway, you read it, it'll make you laugh. And that's the God's honest truth. You want to go online about put a name up and it comes up. It's quite funny. So, and the other story you want to know about Pat Eddery, Willie Carson. Yes. I was riding in the Brighton Cup and I got up and beat Willie Carson a short head. And Pat Eddery didn't like was riding very hard. So he came in and joked with Willie. And they were giving him so much stick because the girl beat Willie Carson. And Pat Eddery says, well, I could have finished second. He said, but I'll let you finish second. I don't want to finish second to her. And that's what the banter used to go on. No, but the laugh ended up on me because Willie Carson laughs about it and brings it up because he's quite chauvinistic, Willie, I'm afraid. He brings it up and says, I had the last life because the stewards of the jockey club suddenly decided that as an amateur had never turned professional, yeah? You can go back in the archives and read this. An amateur had never turned professional. And in the old days, if you'd ridden 10 winners, you lose your £7 as an apprentice. Well, I had ridden exactly 10 winners as an amateur, okay? But I was claiming 7. It took them 8 months to realise, and riding lots of winners, to realise that there was a rule they made up, the jockey club. So they dragged me in and took 4 races off me, and one of them was the Willie Carson one. But that's another story. That's how much they didn't want me around. There was no rule that said, but there was a tiny little rule 254. If you have ridden 10 winners, you can no longer claim 7. So naturally, I'd love to have only been claiming 5, you know what I mean? Because I was wasting my guts out. But I'd been claiming 7 and they picked the right week. I'd ridden like 4 decent winners that week and they picked that week to take the races off me. 6 months after I'd ridden all these winners. They had to find something on me to knock me down. You with me?
So you had to give your the purse back.
Yeah, I know. I lost the races. You know, it was extremely upsetting. You know, for me because I had to lose like £7 overnight on one of them. I'd love to. If I'd been doing overweight, there'd be a problem, would there? If I'd done £2 overweight, but they had to find something every week. You don't understand. Every week, if it wasn't jockeys giving me shit, it was the stewards giving me shit, or my dad giving me aggravation, or an assistant trainer giving me it. I just got it I got it from both sides, every side. Honestly, it was horrible, and I got through. But I got through it. Whether it made me a better person.
Okay, how are you finding like your staff these days, like recruiting good staff, etc., etc.?
And every trainer will probably say this. I'm pretty lucky because my head girl's been with me 22 years, yeah. Mm-hmm. But she worked for St. Old Molars, okay, and she's still a better rider than most of the young'uns. She's 68. I mean, she'd be she's down to one or two lots now. I think I've got to retire her soon from riding. She's a brilliant feeder, and I'm very, very lucky. I've had 2 very good people. My number 2. I've had Joe Crowley, who became a successful trainer 10 years, and I've had Liz Mullen. And she said the game's gone. She said the staff aren't the same, the younger staff. Whether we've got to seriously look at where we would get our staff from, how we're teaching them. It's all right becoming jockeys, but they've got to learn the basics. Pick your feet out, brush the horse over. How many times I have to tell staff when they join me, put the bridle on, pick your feet out, because no foot, no horse. And if the shoe's moved, then, you know, you can't ride it out and you can get on another one. We can get the farrier in. Brush the horse over so he's tidy and, you know, it's like washing yourself. And then put your tack on. It's not hard, is it? It's like doing the same thing every day, but they still find it quite hard. They don't seem, the younger generation don't seem to have the work ethic as we did. And it's only the last 5 years it's got quite poor. And there's, you know, I think everywhere in jobs, they're finding staff hard to recruit. But I always believe that racing should be valued as a skilled job. And the only way it's going to be as a skilled job for staff is having more wages, because they don't get paid particularly very well. I mean, I do my best to pay them what I can without going bankrupt. It should be regarded as a skilled job. Well, since we're not riding horses, dangerous horses every day, early hours of the morning, not a skilled job. But it only can be regarded as a skilled job if we can get the prize money, can pay them more, because that's the only way trainers, unless you're born with a silver spoon and you're funding your business, because that's what's happening, these big trainers, they can't survive. They're funding the businesses. Take the Arabs away, will the owners be able to pay, normal owners be able to pay Arab prices? They can't. But they would be able to if they got a return on the purses, better than prize money. And it's a knock-on effect, really. And that's why we're getting poorer applications for coming into racing. If we regard it as a skilled job, it would be a different matter at all. I'm always one man down, but I'm lucky enough to got a nice young lad in the game that I'm teaching, and I've got another young girl I'm teaching. And I like to think I can teach them myself than going to the racing school. They do eventually go to the racing school, but I don't want them learning bad habits. I want to teach them from scratch how I started, and know how I started, and then so forth. And if they've really got the fire in their belly, they make jockeys and they really want to do it. Otherwise, there's other jobs, travelling head lad jobs, there's head lad jobs, second head lads, work riders, professional grooms, travelling. You know, there's lots of jobs in racing, but I still think it should be regarded as a skilled job. That's my opinion.
Yep. One final question, Gay, and it's an important one for me, because I'd love to hear your view on this. What can we do, everyone in racing that's involved in the sport, to stop the outsiders, if you like, dumbing down on racing and trying to get it banned and saying this is cruel, that's cruel? What is there anything more we can actually do, or are we doing all we can do?
I think we're doing a lot of good. I think what I see in other countries, we love our horses, you know. Basically, overall, we love racehorses. The major majority of trainers, owners love their horses, okay? The only thing I would do is look at the horse sales a bit more, where these horses are going, at the lower end of the scale. I mean, I personally, if I have a cheap horse, I say to the owners, look, don't pay the £500 to enter it in the horse sales. Find it a nice home. It's a lovely ride. And they do that. And I'm blessed with owners that are happy for me to rehome them. And I've rehomed over 20, Cosmelly being one of them, one of my great horses that won up at Newcastle, Northumberland Paint Meeting. Great horse. He's got a wonderful home in Wales, and so forth for the rest of them. Bearer, another good old horse. I could have sent that to the sales and the owners would have got diddly squat, and probably horse would be dead by now, because going to some of these countries, you know, God only knows where they end up. I think we've got to look at the horse sales a bit more. We've got to be a bit tougher on where these horses are going. But apart from that, I think the horses are very well looked after overall in racing in England. I mean, the French are so behind on that to us. Just started having my French trainer, she was calling me and said, can you find a home for this horse? I can't find one for in France. So that's how different we are. We're very lucky that way. Yeah. And racing, horse welfare is so important to me. And Yvette Dixon is fighting for horse welfare. She's another one she want to get on the show, because she's very passionate about that.
Yeah, speaking as an owner as well, I can also share that sentiment that it is an owner's responsibility at the end of a horse's career to know where that horse ends up and basically do the best you can for the future well-being of that horse. And that's always been my stance, whether I go to the sales or whether I always find a home if I don't go to the sales. So,
and I think a majority of owners are like that. I really do believe that. English owners. Yeah. I speak for English owners myself. I know they treat their horses with passion and they love them, you know. So they've been a good servant to them. And I think if a horse has been a good servant, I do believe they deserve a good home. I can sleep at night. I know my horses have got lovely homes that, you know, that have been very good to me and put me where I am today.
Absolutely. A great way to finish. Gay, as always, like your last visit for us, tremendous, and this one no less. Thank you very much for your time and coming to speak to us, and no doubt we'll get some good viewing and listening numbers on this one, because of course it's quality content. So thank you very much, Gay Kelleway.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, John. Thank you.
Thanks, Gay.
Thank you. Take care.
No, massive thanks to Gay there, John, and it's such a pleasure having such a distinguished guest on the show from the normal riffraff that we can muster between us. I hope you enjoyed that like I did. It's a pleasure sometimes just to listen. I always got told by my granddad when I was little, if you spend more time listening instead of waffling on, you'll learn a lot more. So I enjoyed that. I hope you did as well, John.
If everybody in racing was as forthright with their opinions as Gay Kelleway, the sport would be in a lot better shape.
Exactly. And the old backbone and bollocks thing comes to mind when we talk about jockeys in this court case, as we've been over. If just a few of them had had bigger bollocks to nip this in the bud before it escalated with the Bryony Frost case, and if Jim Crowley had bigger bollocks, not to say in a courtroom 5 years later or whatever down the line, have the bollocks to go in that to a senior steward and say he shouldn't be riding, pull him over, he stinks of beer, then old Tylicki, old Ironside, would be walking.
Exactly. As I mentioned, the guilty of care thing that they were trying to level at Graham Gibbons should be levelled absolutely full square at the VIII over this. It's a simple fix. They do away with stipendiary stewards, who are all mates of jockeys, and it's all far too cosy. And they install weighing room managers, and that's all they would need to do. The weighing room manager basically just manages the weighing room, and if there's a problem, you go and see them. It's not a difficult problem to fix, but they will make it a difficult problem to fix because, as we've seen time and time again, they're not fit for purpose.
No, this subject will go on and on in chat rooms and etc. And reading an article this week from the Ground Star of all places, obviously our sport, but Paul Carpenter, the GBGB director representing ground owners, has resigned his position on the board. Absolutely infuriated by the situation, ground racing, where he described it. It's a great article you can see for yourself on groundstar.co.uk. And if anyone wants the link, just message us on Twitter. It's a great letter from Paul Carpenter displaying the difficulty he had in getting any change of benefit to the sport. And it was basically, unless it represented the interests of Entain, who obviously represent all the big bookmaker groups, Ladbrokes, Coral, God knows what else, big concern, and ARC, if it didn't represent their interests, he couldn't get anything done. He couldn't get any improvements to anything. And you know what, John? Lydia Hislop first alerted me to this article. And why it rang alarm bells, big alarm bells for me, is because I genuinely see a very similar situation for our sport. Because it just seems to me, whoever takes over at the BHA, and has done for years, ever since I was, in my short trousers. It seems getting anything done with regards to improving the sport, it's like an impossible task. Now, what obstacles are Entain, ARC, and other large bookmaking concerns do you think they're putting in the way? Because it can't all be about them. Surely they know if they run it how they want to run it, it will increase profits, but it will decimate the sport just like it has ground racing, John.
I don't think we care. To be honest, I think they're looking no further than next year's balance sheet. And the problem is here that everything you see on every racing-related website, be it the BHA, the Jockey Club or the Horsemen's Group, they're trying to do everything by consensus. And it clearly doesn't work. Somebody needs to come in here already sporting a gum shield, ready for action, because to get this game into shape and get it properly into the 21st century that we're almost a quarter of the way through by now, and we're still nowhere near actually being in that century as regards racing. We need somebody to get down and get dirty with these people. It's no good if you are having negotiations and you're requiring a Rottweiler and you send the fucking Andrex puppy.
Yeah, I mean, I respect Paul Carpenter for what he wrote. I think it was a great letter. I urge everyone to read it. I have respect for Paul Carpenter on that. However, surely Paul Carpenter should be writing letters like this to the Ground Star while he's there and calling these people out while he's there and he can do more good, not just chucking the towel in and saying this is a waste of time. The way you get big corporations to play ball is to keep biting at their ankles and keep biting at their ankles until you annoy them that much that eventually you might get somewhere.
Well, you can stop ARC overnight. You just tell ARC that unless they toe the line, they no longer race on the roads. Immediately they become flapping tracks. ARC are not the problem. The BHA's lack of backbone and self-awareness is the problem. ARC can stamp the feet all they want. You remove their right to race on the roads, ARC are arseholes. End of. They need telling that. They need telling. They don't need somebody going there and giving them a good listening to. They need telling, like the rest of the courses need telling. The racing game needs to get itself into shape for the new century. Absolutely.
Again, bollocks and backburn. Bollocks and backburn. Sounds like a Boris.
Well, we've already had Robbie Dunne's bollocks discussed, haven't we, in great detail. So.
I'm going to say he's put them out on display, hasn't he, in front of poor Bryony. Whatever she's had to see there, I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely a problem for racing going forwards, reading that ground letter, because obviously they are directly linked. There is a correlation between the two. I think we can see what's going off behind the scenes there with the BHA and like I say, bollocks and back. Right, just to finish the show off then, John, we did promise a John rant, and I can promise you, I can speak for John now and say that he's absolutely busted. He's sat on a mountain of bluster, but because we had Gay brilliantly making the show for us, it's going to wait a week. So sorry about that. We're going to leave you John festering for another week, so he's even angry. So he sleeps like an ogre. So yeah, if you're expecting a John rant this week, sorry, but we did get Gay in the last minute, and we're not going to refuse Gay Kelleway because she is so forthright with her opinions, and we like that here on the Bar Stewards. Just 2 races I want to look at, John, from Saturday, just so we can give the viewers a little bit of taster of what we thought. So the 2 big races at Sandown, especially. That was the Henry VIII, won by Edward Stone. Third time lucky, doing what I think most of us thought was going to happen. He didn't jump as well as he can, but again, his sort of response under pressure wasn't great. He certainly emptied today, John.
He looks like a mile and a half or so over fences, doesn't he, really?
He'd wing 1 or 2 and you'd think, geez, it's quite an impressive sight. And I'm not knocking the horse. I genuinely think that he's an exciting chaser to watch at times. But it's no good if at the business end you're just you've got no.
He's going to be one of these where no matter how well you're going in the middle of the race, you're going to be shitting yourself, aren't you? Because you're never going to think he's going to run 12 a man, really. I've kind of put a line through him, to be honest.
It's kind of Kempton or nothing, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. If that, as he takes on better horses, he's going to have to go quicker and quicker early on, and I just don't fancy the horse now.
No, Edward Stone, very impressive, tipped up by Quentin Franks and myself. Not much joy for any of us these days, so I might make the most of that. Quentin Franks and the fantastic days tipping only exclusively at the Bar Stewards is Quentin Franks, unless he gets big money offers from elsewhere, then he'll do a runner.
He's going to start tipping in the match programme at Newcastle United.
Quality. The lad is on fire, and I welcome it. And I hope he's lined in everyone's pocket. Me and John joked off air. We said we might as well leave Quentin to the Friday show. He can just introduce himself, do a 10-minute spin.
We'll get Les Dennis to do it and just introduce Quentin. We'll just have a takeaway or something. So
that's it. That's the future of the Bar Stewards. Right, we've gone to the Tingle Creek. Shakan poor Swar. He got back very well bet in running early. They couldn't wait to take the 2-1 on after he'd been given the red carpet from the other 4. You're thinking, well, this Shakan poor Swar's got to just pop over him and that's that. But I'm afraid the horse was beaten 40 lengths, John.
You think he gets airsick?
Well, I mean, that's certainly open to question because obviously the visits he's had to these shows aren't the best. Could be that. Could be just he likes his backyard and that's it.
I don't think we'll see him here again, to be honest.
No, I'd be surprised. I'd be amazed. Well, you can't really, can you? You might chance Cheltenham one more time just to see, but I don't know. I think you just save him for
pointless, isn't it? That race has just turned everything on its ass, really, hasn't it? The only thing that was probably as expected there was Blackmore coming third.
Yeah. Who was it that highlighted on Friday's show? Blackmore coming for 1. And it ran very, very well. The thing is, Hitman run above his station because he jumped, apart from the mistake 2 out, he jumped really well up to that point. So Hitman, for me, ran his race. I thought Captain Guinness's run was definitely slightly above par, so it ran well. Greyhound team made a howler at the top of the hill down the back. And I thought that was Greyhound done after the absolute howler. I thought, I think the racing purser pecked on landing. I thought it was more like smashed through the fence.
Kind of pecked on takeoff, actually.
Yeah, it was a very momentum-losing error. But nevertheless, it got into the race lovely and powered up the hill. And I've just got this feeling about Greyhound, though, before anyone gets excited. I did say on the pod I thought he was in for his best year this year. But I also got this feeling, I wonder if he's like really good at Sandown, because 2 runs at Sandown now and he's been most impressive. In fact, no, he's had 3 runs, against Politologue back in his career. I felt that the last 2 runs at Sandown been very impressive, but he's not been that impressive elsewhere. So I just wondered if he just enjoyed the fences at Sandown. Maybe the 2 best performances of his career have come here. So I don't know.
Maybe like running round the pond fence. And...
Right, we're going to wrap it up there. We've had a fabulous chat. Me, John, Gay Kelleway, who's always welcome on the show. And I hope you all enjoyed it. We'll be back on Friday, and we do our best to line your pockets of gold. As I said in the preview last week, me and John take it out of the left pocket, whilst Quentin puts it back in the right. That's all from me and John. Have a great week. Bye for now.
Right, the show's over, boys. Thank you very much.